For me, classical music is a canvas for experimentation that allows for rule breaking on an infinite scale.
A string quartet composed as a reaction to the American presidential election, and a string quartet that asks the audience to sing and clap along. Does that sound like classical music to you? Well, it is, and the piece really works. It manages to do two very rare things. Shows us how elements that seem very different can work together absolutely beautifully, and the music actually brings people together. The piece is called American Mirror, and on this very first episode of the Salastina podcast, Sounds Interesting, we'll tell you the story behind this very special piece. I'm Brian Lauritsen, the resident host and artistic partner for the Salastina Music Society, and I'm here with the co-directors of Salastina.
I'm Kevin Kumar.
And I'm Maya Jasper White.
Salastina is a live concert series based in Southern California. Maya and I started Salastina to share what we love about classical chamber music.
This is our first podcast.
Yay!
This episode will give you a taste of a live concert format that we developed a few years ago called Sounds Genius. What we'll do is we'll take you on a guided tour through a really special piece of music, and after that, you'll listen to a complete performance of it.
So let's jump right in. In October of 2017, Salastina gave the world premiere of American Mirror, a string quartet written especially for us by our good friend, Derrick Spiva Jr., an award-winning composer.
So already just hearing these little bits and pieces of American Mirror, it's clear that there's a lot going on in this music. And I'm curious, why do you guys love this piece so much? What is it about the music that hooked you?
Well, these days it wouldn't be much of a stretch to say that there are a lot of sharp lines drawn between different kinds of people in America and in the world, and that America is still trying to figure out who and what it's made of. And what I love about Derrick's music is that he takes all these different categories and subgenres of music from all over the world and manages to synthesize them into something that still preserves some of their original integrity, but also a very unified and American distinct sound. And I think that not only is it like a very profound idea, but it's done with such art and grace and love and humor.
Yeah, I love all those things, and I love that the piece feels like one big warm hug. And I love that it actually speaks directly to my own American experience.
I feel like we have kind of an idea of what the American sound in music is. Mm-hmm. And, thanks, Aaron Copland. Like, you were a great composer, but that's only one aspect of what American music is. But America is so much more than one person's experience of it. Mm-hmm. So also American music is more than one composer's thoughts of what it can be. And this piece definitely goes there for me. So how did this piece come about? Well, the good thing is we get to find out direct from the mouth of the composer because Derrick Spiva is here with us. And Derrick, welcome. Thanks so much for being part of this podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Set the scene for this piece.
Yeah, so I started it before the election, but before the election, there was just hate, just flinging back and forth in both camps all across the country. It was really sad. And, when I started writing this piece, I was just like, you know what? For me, the challenge, the greatest challenge in human history has been how to communicate. Mm-hmm. You either communicate well and everybody lives, or you communicate poorly and a lot of people pay for it with their lives. And so when I approach how powerful music can be as a communication tool, my approach is how can I make it so that all of these other cultures that are around the world, how can I make it so that their voices, the roots that they have, can also be reflected in American classical music, just like anything else. And so during the whole firestorm of 2016, I felt like at that time we needed more to understand how close we were as a country than to think about how far apart we were.
The beautiful thing about this piece is that even though it kind of is a work of political activism in a way. But historically, a lot of times people will use parody or kind of sarcasm to get the point across. But your whole piece is based on sincerity, which is beautiful. For example, here's a chorale from American Mirror that we have been calling the hymn. Yeah, so that has a very nostalgic American sound. But that's just a point of departure for the whole piece.
This hymn sounds like an American hymn, but it's not built like one because it's in 7 beats. And that's not normal for American hymns. However, I don't think anybody could really tell that was in 7 beats. I don't think it really mattered. It really kind of felt, to me at least, like a really natural, regular American hymn. And so the purpose of that, for me, was to say that, there are Americans that don't look like what you would think, and it's totally fine. People are totally part of the fabric of this society, and there's really no reason to fear anybody based
different.
or something different based on how they look or what their traditions are. This is not something that needs to be, you don't have to be afraid of it.
Let's hear how you added those little flicks to the hymn to kind of prove the point that it still sounds like it's all okay.
Oh, yeah. So there, what you heard is I started adding decorations to the lines of the hymn that were influenced by the solo decorations in Eastern European music, specifically Bulgarian women's choir singing, Caval flute playing. Listening to those lines, people can also hear other cultures that have those same types of decorative material. And so it kind of becomes a bit of a question mark where exactly that's from. And that's my entire life.
That's
right
it's
there.
the point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the whole point. Like, wow, that kind of sounds like X, but it could be Y. So I don't really know where that's from. My background is I grew up, I'm African American. The household that I grew up in was very musical. My mother and father were avid churchgoers. My dad played piano and played organ, directed the choir in the church. So that's where I kind of got a lot of my desire to be involved in the arts and music. Is because in church, the music was used to channel joy, to channel sadness, to channel anger, to channel courage, and to channel bravery. That's all of that was what music was used for, and continues to be used for in churches. And so that was my kind of first connection to music, is kind of in that sense. Throughout the piece, there's influences from gospel music, and I have a mixture of solo work. Vocalists, when they solo, to kind of add that extra ornamentation on top of gospel music that everybody loves, usually brings people to tears, people up, like shouting and enjoying themselves. The kind of really kind of forceful, energetic choruses that are like rhythmically unison, very powerful moments in gospel music. This next part was inspired by a contemporary Bulgarian women's choir.
They're so awesome.
And yeah, it's one of the greatest approaches to vocal music. I just love it so much.
Would you say, like, people's expectations of who you were and are as a musician are shaped by what you look like?
There's definitely like an image that people have in their head, and it's not their fault. I mean, to be honest, it's not their fault. Like, that's how the information is unfolded in media and in institutions, and so you can't help but have those images pop up automatically. I had a premiere, and so I wrote this piece, and even out in the lobby, you know, this father is sitting there telling this kid, like, but this is the composer. He's right here. And the kid just couldn't believe it. He's just like, no, like, I don't understand. And the dad was like, no, but this is him. And the kid was like so confused that I would just be like there and not be a white man or not be dead. You know, and I used to, I continue to this day to never like when I'm typecasted, you know. So I usually like to do what people don't think I would kind of be doing unless I told them I was doing. There's a lot of joy going on there. There's a Hindustani classical element with the repeated pattern.
Kevin and Maya, what was that like for you to join in on percussion?
Well, I realized too late in the game that my claps were of an ear-splitting high frequency.
Oh, we would brace ourselves every time Maya was in class.
But
you
then
could wear earplugs like they do in orchestras.
That's right. And it's from teaching. So when I'm like really trying to get my students to follow time, I'm just like, clapping so loudly. But
Let's hear it.
Really?
Give us a good clap. Yeah. Ow.
Yep.
When we
Having
recorded,
a flashback.
when we recorded this, the engineer was like, Maya, you can clap a little louder. And I'd just been like beaten down by my colleagues, like shaming me for my
We were just protecting
clap
ourselves.
sonic
that's all.
frequency.
The emotional scars.
Yeah. It was super fun. It always made me smile, when I wasn't really self-conscious about being judged.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's another example of Derrick kind of blurring the lines or knocking down boundaries. Because when we're making music, we don't, in a traditional string quartet, you don't usually use your body.
Yeah.
You don't use your body as an instrument. Like, you don't, clap or sing or do those kinds of things. There's no objective reason for that boundary. It's just a tradition. So it was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I really love the instrument of hand clapping. Like, that's one of the most basic ways that somebody can support an artist that they love is by clapping along to whatever they're singing. And even if somebody feels like they can't hold, there are people that can't hold pitch, but they clap their hands.
But I do want to see your Spotify Discover Weekly playlist because I think if algorithms could swear,
Yeah, they'd be like,
there's
what
we're
the
like,
hell?
What the?
I'm working so hard. I want to see your Discover.
Well, I think that Spotify needs to go down to Ethnomusicology Library at UCLA and get some sounds out of there because
They're
half
missing
of my library is field recordings because there's music happening that's just truly extraordinary and it's just not available for the public.
Yeah.
So even with all this other stuff going on, you still describe what you do as being classical music.
I do.
Why is that?
Yeah. So classical music to me is the biggest tint of a genre there is. When I think about classical music, I'm going to say this is for me here. I would say what it is, but what I think it is. For me, classical music is a canvas for experimentation that allows for rule breaking on an infinite scale. But so for example, there's hip hop, right? And then there are things that you could do to a piece that you say is hip hop, and then the minute you do it, somebody else or a whole nother group of people is going to say, well, now it's not hip hop anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But there are some people that would say that, oh, well, you did this, but now it's not classical music anymore. But then there would be a huge amount of people that would easily be able to argue with that because there's so many different approaches to classical music. And there are constantly more approaches being made to classical music. It could all be classical music.
Is it important to you to call yourself a classical musician? Like to have that as part of your identity?
Yeah, I think so, because to me, that's absolute freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I can do what we can do whatever we want. Somebody made a piece, John Cage, 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence.
Yeah.
So classical music actually means freedom to you.
Absolute
Whereas,
freedom.
Generally the view is the complete opposite.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. I know that people think it's the complete opposite, but they're welcome to think that if they want. but that's not what it is. To me, that's not what it is. I mean, somebody say, oh, no, Bach and Beethoven, that's classical music. Oh, okay, well, what about Philip Glass? You know, or what about John Cage? What about Xenakis? What about Stravinsky?
Yeah.
But they're still, if you go look them all up, where are they at? They're under classical music.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying here. As someone who works at a classical music radio station, our definitions of what that is, you know, for broadcast purposes, and it all makes sense because you're creating an aesthetic that's based on the understanding of the audience of what the art form is. So you're almost like sort of reinforcing, you know, a certain cycle. But I feel like what we currently broadcast, it's such a narrow sliver of what classical music is. And I love for you to say, like, that classical music to you is the biggest tent.
The biggest tent.
Because we look at classical music from a broadcasting standpoint as, like, our audience is going to be the smallest sliver of the total, like, radio listening audience.
Constraint.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I really see this symmetry between, like, the need to categorize what is an American identity and what is classical music and what is it not, as really being kind of the same impulse. And that if you think of America as a place that isn't technically like an ethnicity, you know, it's not something you can define. And, you know, we're all sitting here struggling, trying to define, you know, the DNA of classical music, really, because it's always evolving. So, like, if the backbone of America or the kind of unifying element is ideology, I feel like that's also true of classical music. You know, it's kind of like this, like you said, a tent, you know, that can include pretty much anything. You know, it's a free for all. Yeah.
Majority of the rule breaking in genres, to me, has happened in classical music with composers that were thought of as classical composers.
Right, exactly. And there's nothing about what you're saying that's like irreverent towards that tradition from the past. You know, nothing about including different languages and styles moving forward somehow wipes the record clean of Beethoven and Schubert and that kind of thing.
Well, and also, like, who do we remember throughout musical history? We remember the people that broke the rules.
That's right, yeah.
We remember that Beethoven did things that everyone thought was, like, ridiculous and over the top. We remember that Wagner, like, exploded our concept of what an opera could be. We remember the people that broke the rules. We don't remember as much the folks that had really good command of sonata allegro form. Like, great job, Dittersdorf and Salieri and Anton Reicha. Like, due respect, because they made good music, but they didn't do anything outside of what was the established practice. So
and then there's and you know, there's a lot of jazz composers of the past where they rode the line of, like, jazz and classical music. A lot of composers of color that even though they were composing jazz or what people would perceive as jazz, it was also, in my view, classical music.
Yeah.
You know,
the difference between your view and, let's say, the opposite view is you include a kind of evolution and an approach that welcomes change. Whereas the other approach is one that preserves an identity and it has very, very clear lines to show what that identity is. And of course, we like your version.
It's that Gustav Mahler riffing on Thomas More. Tradition is not the worship of ashes, but the preservation of fire.
Oh, I love that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, classical music, there's absolute freedom.
So in just a moment, we're going to hear a complete performance of Derrick Spiva's American Mirror. Kevin and Maya, maybe you could talk just briefly about the actual visceral, physical, emotional, mental experience of performing this piece.
I was born and raised in Southern California as the child of immigrants. My dad came from a small village in India, in North India, and my mom came from a small village in South Korea. So growing up at home, I heard Hindustani music. I heard Hindu devotional songs. My mom was the daughter of a preacher, of a minister, so we heard church music growing up all the time, along with, being trained in classical music and just listening to popular music and gospel music and R&B. And my experiences with the art form that I participate in haven't included those influences. So being able to perform a piece that really described, really accurately, kind of in an uncanny way, my American experience it was a totally new thing. I love the music that we traditionally perform as classical musicians, but this is something that was descriptive of my life. And so that experience was really special.
Derrick is just my friend. So getting to perform a piece by my friend, especially that he wrote us just as a gift, that alone was a first for me, and it was really special in that sense. I think also just as an artist, you sometimes feel this weird sense of obligation mixed with helplessness when there's weird stuff going on politically. And what I loved about Derrick's piece and the time in which we played it, we didn't even talk explicitly about the political climate ever during the concerts. It was more I loved that the music made such an obvious, lovely, beautiful, consoling, courageous statement without triggering anyone's defenses, and I think that made me feel yes, this is something that we can actually do, to have meaning in what's going on right now, all while supporting a friend. And it was just the best piece of new music that I'd ever played. So for all of those reasons, that's what it was like.
Excellent. Well, we've talked about so many different elements in this piece. We've dissected it, we've broken it apart, and we're going to put it back together again and hear a complete performance of American Mirror. But Derrick, as we lead into this performance, there's one element that we didn't talk about, and that is the element of humming. Can you tell us what that is and what it represents in this piece?
Yeah, so a lot of the context around the piece surrounds the word and the definition support. How we support one another, how we support ourselves. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I wanted to make sure that the audience could participate in supporting the music beyond observation. One of the elements that I used to do that was I wanted the audience to engage in humming the drone at the beginning of the piece to help support the musicians. A drone is a very powerful thing, a very grounded, a foundation on which someone else can dance and thrive. And so for me, I thought that was really important for the audience to be able to add that element for the musicians to really kind of create how this piece was going to open, using them.
People really found that to be a beautiful experience. Also, just being around other people who are humming, too, it creates this sort of, your body reacts in a really special way. And also, in classical music concerts, there seems to be this space that the audience is not allowed in, in that performance space. And I just think it enhanced the total experience, their enjoyment, their immersion in the music when they could be part of it.
Mm-hmm.
This is American Mirror by Derrick Spiva with the musicians of the Salastina Music Society, violinists Kevin Kumar and Maya Jasper White, violist Meredith Crawford, and cellist Yoshika Masuda. We've just heard American Mirror by Derrick Spiva, as performed by the musicians of the Salastina Music Society, violinists Kevin Kumar and Maya Jasper White, violist Meredith Crawford, and cellist Yoshika Masuda. This recording part of Derrick Spiva's album titled, as a matter of fact, American Mirror. And you can visit his organization's website, which is bridgetoeverywhere.org. And thanks to the members of Bridge to Everywhere for being the singers and the clappers and the hummers in that recording. To learn more about Salastina and to attend our live concerts, just visit the website, salastina.org, salastina.org. And we're planning about 3 of these podcasts per season, unless we receive some more funding, maybe, perhaps. I don't know.
Brian.
What do I know about raising money? But you can make a tax-deductible donation to us as well. That's salastina.org. I'm Brian Lawrenson, the resident host and artistic partner for Salastina.
I'm Maya Jasper White, the co-artistic director.
I'm Kevin Kumar, the co-artistic director.
And our very special thanks to Derrick Spiva for being with us on this podcast.
Thank you,
Thank
Derrick.
you, everybody. Enjoy the piece, everyone.
Sounds Interesting is written and produced by Maya and Kevin, and a little bit of me. Special thanks to Derrick Spiva, Meredith Crawford, Yoshika Masuda, and Bridge to Everywhere. And special thanks to all of our patrons, members, audience members, and listeners. Don't forget, visit salastina.org and subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcasting app. And especially if you enjoyed this first episode, help get the word out by rating us with as many stars as you feel we deserve. Thanks. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later.